Virgo, there is a test most people do not know they are taking. No one announces it. No one hands you a paper and a timer and a list of questions with clearly marked answers. It arrives disguised as the worst period of your life, as the thing that was done to you, as the moment someone who was supposed to protect something precious decided instead to treat it carelessly, deliberately, with the specific cruelty that only people who have been trusted can deploy. The test was never about them. It was always about you. And Virgo, you passed. I am not going to ease into this one because the energy of this reading does not ask for easing. It asks for precision. It asks for the specific, unflinching naming of what actually happened, what is actually happening now, and what the difference between those two things reveals about who you are and what you are made of. So let us begin with the betrayal. Not to dwell in it, not to reopen what has been healing, but because understanding the exact nature of what was done is the only way to fully understand the exact nature of what you survived. And the surviving of it, Virgo, is the whole story. The betrayal is just the context. You are the subject. The first image arrives and it is sharp. I see something that was built with care. Not constructed overnight, not thrown together in the easy casual way of things that do not matter, something that required time and attention and the particular investment of a person who means what they do. A structure, delicate in some places, solid in others, assembled from the specific materials of trust and vulnerability and the willingness to let someone see you in the unguarded dimensions that are not available to just anyone. You built this. You brought these materials to someone who presented themselves as worthy of receiving them. And then I see what they did with what you built. They did not destroy it in a moment of passion or carelessness or the kind of human failing that is ugly but understandable. They moved through it deliberately, made choices inside it that they knew contradicted everything it was built to contain, treated the structure of what you had created together as a backdrop for something that had nothing to do with what it was meant to hold. And they did this while the structure was still standing, while you were still inside it. That is the specific quality of this betrayal. Not the falling apart of something that had run its course. The active, conscious, choice-by-choice contamination of something that was still alive and real and entirely deserving of a different treatment. I need to speak now about what you did immediately after. Not what you showed, what you actually did internally in the private accounting of your own experience that happened in the hours and days and weeks after the full weight of what had occurred settled into understanding. You did not collapse. I want to be specific about what I mean by that, because not collapsing does not mean not being devastated. You were devastated. The specific and appropriate devastation of someone who gave something real and watched it be treated as if it were worth nothing, that devastation was real and it was right, and it would have been dishonest not to feel it. But underneath the devastation, something else was also operating, something that did not have a name in the immediate aftermath, but that was there, a kind of bedrock, a part of you that the betrayal could injure but could not reach all the way to, a foundational layer of self-knowing that was not dependent on this person's choices for its existence or its validity, that could absorb the impact of what they did without being structurally compromised by it. You did not know you had that layer, not until it was tested. Now you know. Let me describe what is happening with your ex-lover right now. And I want to be honest about the timeline of what I am seeing, because it did not arrive in them all at once. This realization has been accumulating, building, arriving in pieces over a period of time that corresponds, not coincidentally, with the time it has taken for the consequences of their choices to make themselves fully visible. In the beginning, after the betrayal, they were fine, or they performed fine convincingly enough that the performance held. There was a period of whatever they moved toward when they moved away from you, the thing or the person or the situation that had generated the choices they made. And in that period, the distance from the consequences of those choices provided a kind of insulation. Things felt manageable, justified. Even the narrative they had constructed about why what they did was either necessary or reasonable or less bad than it actually was held its shape. Then something shifted. Not a single event, a series of small arrivals, moments where the insulation thinned, where the distance between the constructed narrative and the actual consequences of their choices closed enough that the gap became visible, where the thing they moved toward revealed itself in the fullness of what it actually was rather than what it had appeared to be in the period when they were comparing it favorably to you. That comparison is no longer favorable. I see a second image now that has been waiting with a particular quality of patience. I see something that was exchanged, a trade. And I want to describe the terms of this trade as clearly as I can, because understanding it is essential to understanding why the realization your ex-lover is now experiencing carries the specific weight that it does. They traded depth for surface. They traded the specific, hard-earned, genuinely rare quality of what existed with you, something that required real presence and real honesty and the real vulnerability of being known by someone who perceives as clearly as you perceive, for something that offered the appearance of those things without their actual content, something easier to be around, less demanding of their full self, less accurate in its reading of who they actually were. And for a while, the easier thing felt like relief. That is the seduction of it. The exhaustion of being truly known is real. The exhaustion of being with someone who does not miss things, who cannot be easily fooled, who will feel the dissonance between what you say and what you mean, is something that people with things to hide experience as pressure rather than intimacy. They chose relief from the pressure of your perception, and what they have now in exchange for that relief is something that does not see them, something that accepts the performance of themselves without requiring the substance, something that it turns out feels less like relief and more like invisibility. They did not understand the difference until they were living in it. Here is the part of the realization that is costing them the most. It is not the loss of you specifically, though that is real and present in the energy. It is the confrontation with what the choice reveals about them, because betrayal of the specific kind that occurred here is not a neutral act. It is not something a person can examine honestly without learning something about themselves that is uncomfortable to know. And this person is in the process of that examination, not chosen, imposed by the relentless way that reality continues, generating evidence regardless of whether you are ready to receive it, evidence about the quality of what they gave up, evidence about the actual nature of what they chose instead, evidence about their own capacity or the limit of their capacity at that time to be in something real without finding a way to undermine it. The evidence is comprehensive. And They are sitting in it without the exits they used to have available, because the story they told themselves about why they did what they did has stopped working, has worn through in the places it was always thinnest, has revealed the framework beneath the justifications, the actual structure of choices made from a place that had nothing to do with you and everything to do with their own unresolved interior. You were not the problem. You were never the problem, and they know it now in a way they cannot unknow. Let me ask you something that I want you to answer only for yourself. When the betrayal first became clear, was there a moment before the grief fully arrived where something in you already knew? Not knew the details, not had the complete picture, but knew in the body level way that your system registers what the mind has not yet processed. A moment of stillness before the impact landed, a strange, almost eerie calm. The particular quality of sensation that belongs to something confirming what was already suspected rather than introducing something entirely new. If that moment exists in your memory, I want you to hold it for a second, because that moment is evidence of something important. It is evidence that your perception was functioning correctly throughout, that the signals were real, that the dissonance you felt in certain moments, the things that did not add up, the times you were told you were imagining something you were not imagining, were being registered accurately by a system that was doing its job. You were right. The whole time, you were right. Tell me in the comments whether you felt that moment, whether there was a part of you that knew before you were ready to know. Not because I need you to confirm anything about yourself to me, but because naming it, even in a comment, even anonymously, is a way of completing something that deserves to be completed. The third image comes in now, and it carries a different quality from everything that preceded it in this reading. I see your ex-lover in a moment of genuine, unguarded solitude. No audience, no performance of how they are doing, just them alone with the actual content of their interior experience, which is considerably less comfortable than any version of it they have presented to anyone else. And in this solitude, a specific and pointed awareness is making itself impossible to sidestep. They are aware of what they had, not in the abstract, in the specific tactile, memory-saturated detail of what it actually felt like to be in the presence of someone like you, the quality of being known, the particular safety of an intimacy that did not require them to manage how they were being perceived, because the person perceiving them was doing so with genuine care rather than judgment. The way conversations with you moved, the way you loved, which was not casual and not conditional and not managed from behind appropriate distance, but full and real and given without the protections that most people keep between themselves and their own generosity. They are aware of having left that by choice. And the awareness of having left it by choice is the specific thing that distinguishes this realization from ordinary grief. Ordinary grief says, I lost something. This says, I gave something away. I made choices that resulted in the departure of something that did not have to depart. I created the loss. That is a different weight, and it sits differently. I want to say something now about the test, because the title of this reading names it, and it deserves to be fully understood rather than used as a satisfying word that is not actually examined. What was the test? It was not a test of whether you could survive betrayal, though you demonstrated that. It was not a test of whether you could hold yourself together under circumstances that would have dismantled less grounded people, though you demonstrated that too. The test was something more specific. It was a test of who you are when the external confirmation of your value is removed. When the person who was supposed to see you chose not to. When the structure you built was treated as worthless. When the evidence available to you, had you only looked at the external circumstances, would have supported the conclusion that you were not enough, not worth keeping, not worth the basic honesty and respect that you had brought to the situation in full. Could you maintain your own knowing of your worth in the absence of external confirmation of it? Could you continue to be who you are without the validation of someone who had declared through their actions that they did not value it? Could you hold your standard, your integrity, your full self intact, even inside the injury of what was done? You could. You did. The test was never something they administered deliberately. It was generated by the situation, by the collision of who they were in that moment and who you have always been. And the result is a clarity about yourself that cannot be given to you by any other means. You know what you are made of now, not because someone told you, because it was tested, because the pressure was applied and the foundation held. That knowledge is permanent. There is a final image, and it has been the quietest presence in this reading, waiting at the edge of everything else. I see two different positions on a road, not the same road described in any previous reading. This one is wide and runs in a direction that is clearly forward, clearly onward, clearly toward something that exists ahead rather than behind. And on this road, two positions. One is further along, moving, not rushing, not performing, motion for the benefit of anyone watching. Just actually in motion, covering actual ground, oriented toward actual destinations that have been chosen from genuine knowing rather than from the management of what anyone else expects. That position is yours. The other position is behind, standing still or moving slowly, in the particular way of someone whose attention keeps pulling backward toward something they cannot quite bring themselves to leave fully, even as forward motion is technically happening. Covering less ground than the distance their steps suggest, because the weight of what they are still carrying, the reckoning they are in the middle of, the realization that is still arriving and still asking things of them, makes swift forward motion impossible right now. They are behind you on this road, not as a statement of competition, not as a measurement of worth, as a simple, accurate description of where the respective journeys are. You are ahead. You have been ahead. And the distance between your position and theirs grows, not because you are running, but simply because you kept moving when the circumstances of the betrayal could have stopped you entirely. They did not stop you. They clarified you and clarified Virgo with the full knowledge of what you are made of permanently added to everything else you carry. Keep going. The road ahead of you belongs to someone who passed the test, and that someone is you.